Prince Andrew is about to commit the age-old error of ignoring his lawyer's advice, and he is about to screw up big. Here's how. According to Fox News, Prince Andrew is building up a $12 million war chest to sue the woman who says he raped her when she was a teen, even though he's already paid the woman millions of dollars to settle her case. Virginia Giuffre, the woman, has said she made a mistake about whether someone else abused her, and Prince Andrew is apparently hoping to hop onto that bandwagon and convince Giuffre to tell the world she's changed her mind about whether Prince Andrew abused her. He's also hoping to convince the world that a photograph of him standing with his arm around Giuffre is faked. But he is about to open a can of worms, and I don't think it's going to get him what he wants. Let's dive in. Here's the background. There are 5 chief characters you have to know. Jeffrey Epstein was a convicted pedophile and sex trafficker who died in jail. Ghislaine Maxwell was his girlfriend and is now also in jail for sexual trafficking along with Epstein. Virginia Giuffre says Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell trafficked her, and one of the people they trafficked her to was Prince Andrew. Prince Andrew is Prince Andrew, formerly known as His Royal Highness. Alan Dershowitz is a Harvard Law School professor. Giuffre initially said she was trafficked to Dershowitz as well. As for Prince Andrew, this all came to a head when Virginia Giuffre filed suit against Prince Andrew saying he abused her. Andrew asked to dismiss the case. His argument was that Giuffre had settled with Epstein, and that ought to cover everyone she said she'd been trafficked to. The court said no. A month later, without any ruling on whether Giuffre had in fact been trafficked to or abused by Andrew, Andrew and Giuffre settled the case for a reputed $3 to $14 million, plus some statements by Andrew. For example, Andrew said, "It is known that Jeffrey Epstein trafficked countless young girls over many years. Prince Andrew regrets his association with Epstein and commends the bravery of Miss Giuffre and other survivors in standing up for themselves and others. He pledges to demonstrate his regret for his association with Epstein by supporting the fight against the evils of sex trafficking and by supporting its victims." Part of the settlement also involved Andrew donating money to Giuffre's charity in support of victims' rights. But it's probably safe to say that the fallout from the settlement was more painful than Andrew was expecting. He was stripped of his military titles and royal patronages. He had to stop using His Royal Highness in an official capacity. He was not invited to join the Queen on the Buckingham Palace balcony at her Platinum Jubilee this past year. So perhaps it's small wonder that Andrew has latched onto 2 things that happened, hoping that he might reverse what has happened. First, Virginia Giuffre did not just accuse Andrew. She also claimed Jeffrey Epstein trafficked her to renowned Harvard Law professor Alan Dershowitz. Dershowitz vehemently denied her claims and suggested she and her lawyers were trying to extort money out of people. Giuffre and her attorney sued Dershowitz for defamation. Dershowitz countersued, and ultimately the two settled for mutual releases, meaning she released him and he released her. As part of that settlement, Giuffre released a statement, "I have long believed that I was trafficked by Jeffrey Epstein to Alan Dershowitz. However, I was very young at the time. It was a very stressful and traumatic environment, and Mr. Dershowitz has, from the beginning, consistently denied these allegations." She said, "I now recognize I may have made a mistake in identifying Mr. Dershowitz." Dershowitz issued a statement too, saying, "I am gratified that Virginia Giuffre has dropped all of her claims against me and has admitted that she now recognizes she may have made a mistake in identifying me." He insisted he never had sex with Giuffre and said, "I have nevertheless come to believe that at the time she accused me, she believed what she said." Miss Giuffre is to be commended for her courage in now stating publicly that she may have been mistaken about me. She has suffered much at the hands of Jeffrey Epstein, and I commend her work combating the evil of sex trafficking. For his part, Dershowitz also admitted he had been mistaken when he alleged there was an extortion plot by Guiffre and her attorney. The change with Dershowitz gave Andrew renewed hope. A second matter that may have emboldened Andrew is that Ghislaine Maxwell gave a jailhouse interview to Talk TV. The interview will air tonight, but clips were released early in which Ghislaine said that the photograph of Andrew, Guiffre, and Ghislaine standing together was photoshopped. According to Fox News, Andrew is now amassing a $12 million war chest to go after Guiffre, but there are huge differences between what happened with Andrew and what happened with Dershowitz. First, Dershowitz did not pay Guiffre millions of dollars, and reportedly Andrew did, and informed the court that the case was over. Second, there was that picture of Andrew with his arm around Guiffre. Third, the Dershowitz case is not necessarily connected to the one against Prince Andrew. Just because Guiffre was mistaken about Dershowitz doesn't mean she was mistaken about Andrew. She implies that she was mistaken about the identity of Dershowitz, but there's no question that people looking at the photograph believe that is Prince Andrew with his arm around Guiffre. Now, would it help to be able to cross-examine Guiffre to point out that she changed her mind about being assaulted by Dershowitz? Presuming the court would allow that into evidence, absolutely it would help. But that's not the question, because Guiffre and Prince Andrew have a settlement. So Andrew would have to be either asking the court to set aside the settlement he already agreed to, or filing a new suit against Guiffre. For obvious reasons, courts don't want to set aside settlements or judgments, or they could never be sure they were done with the case. They will sometimes set aside a verdict or judgment, though, if, one, a mistake, inadvertent, surprise, or excusable neglect has happened. Number two, if new evidence has been discovered that could not have been discovered earlier. Or three, for fraud or misrepresentation or misconduct by one of the parties. But none of those factors really applies here. The fact that a jailed felon says the photo was doctored is not particularly helpful. First of all, Andrew had been saying all along that the photo was doctored, so that's nothing new. When he agreed to settle with Guiffre, he already thought the photos were false, and the Daily Beast was already reporting that there was no original of the photo. Andrew made the decision to settle when he already was claiming that the photo was doctored. The testimony by Ghislaine Maxwell is not going to turn the ship around. After all, she's a convicted felon imprisoned for sex trafficking young girls like Virginia Giuffre, and she was in the very picture she's talking about. She's not exactly an unbiased and credible witness, particularly because she would be testifying from jail. And to make matters worse, early on, after the photograph surfaced, Ghislaine Maxwell wrote an email to Dershowitz saying she thought the photo looked real. And of course, there is the fact that Ghislaine Maxwell and Andrew have been friends for decades. In fact, when Andrew was trying to defend himself from accusations that he invited Jeffrey Epstein to events where Epstein would be around the royal family, Andrew defended himself by saying that he wasn't really inviting Epstein. He really was inviting his dear friend Ghislaine Maxwell, and she just brought along her boyfriend Epstein as her plus one. So none of the information about the photograph is new, and the fact that Andrew's close friend Ghislaine Maxwell is now willing to say she thinks the photo is doctored when she said the opposite before is not likely to be a significant help in getting the court to overturn the settlement. And Guiffre's statement about Dershowitz is not likely to move the needle either. Guiffre had been accusing Dershowitz since at least 2014, and he had been denying it just as long. So when Andrew settled his case, everybody knew that Guiffre accused Dershowitz, and he denied it. And besides, the fact that she was wrong about Dershowitz does not mean she was wrong about Andrew. If Andrew's going to move to set aside the settlement He's going to have to move quickly. Guiffre's suit against Andrew was filed in federal court in the Southern District of New York, and the federal rules say that a court can grant relief from a final judgment or order within 1 year. But Andrew ought to be very, very reluctant to open the prior action again. Does he really think things are going to get better? His lawyers might opt for suing Guiffre for straight up fraud in a new suit, but given the ambiguity and the fact he already settled the case with all the same information he has now, he has an uphill battle in that case. According to the Mirror, one of Prince Andrew's top lawyers told him he can forget it. The lawyer told Andrew that he should not go after Guiffre and that Andrew should just feel grateful that he is not in jail. It doesn't sound like Andrew's listening if the Fox News article is correct, but his lawyer is exactly right. Prince Andrew needs to leave this alone. He is not going to improve his situation by going after Guiffre. If anything, he will be opening old wounds and making a big mistake by making all of this public again when he was finally through with it. Please, if you would, like the video and be sure to subscribe. I'd love to see you back for more videos on breaking legal news.